Drop it like it's Dr. Oz's political career. Power hour. All right, Cenk, Uygur, Jessica Burbank, Alonzo, Bodden. Can you take it to the bank? Take it to the Burbank. Okay. I'm gonna start out so random, but first, Alonzo, stupid, don't get tired.
What's up?
That's your special. Where is it?
It is on it's on YouTube, and you can find it through my YouTube channel or through Helium Comedy YouTube channel. We recorded it back in March. There's been a lot of stupid since then. Stupid don't get tired. It's a constant job, Cenk, but I'm trying to stay ahead of them, so.
All right, okay, good. And all right, speaking of random, I'm just gonna say something for the record. Officially, it's not one of our stories today, and then we'll move on because we got a lot of news, okay? I'm calling the Pennsylvania Senate race. Dr. Oz is gonna lose. John Fetterman is going to win. It's my earliest call ever. I called the 2012 presidential election 6 weeks ahead of time. This one I'm calling more than 2 months ahead of time. Dr. Oz has fallen and he does not have the ability to get up. Coup d'etat was his amusing nail in the coffin. It's over. Fetterman's going to the Senate, barring some sort of medical awful situation. Outside of some sort of meteor hitting Fetterman directly or the planet in general, Fetterman will win, Oz will lose. So there, how's that for a random beginning to the show?
Cenk has seen enough, the race has been called.
Yes, he has no ability to get back. I said that when they were tied.
I don't know, the coup d'etat voters, you don't want to discount them. It's particularly the ones that come in from outer state on weekends. You know, that's a powerful force there, Cenk. You might be counting them out too soon.
All right, well, let's see if coup d'etat carries the day. Okay, so that was my randomness for the day. Jessica's got the real news.
Yeah, the coup d'etat caucus, one could say. All right, Let's get into it. So we know that Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, has been union busting like crazy, but yesterday he faced a major setback. So a federal judge ordered that Starbucks must immediately reinstate the Memphis 7, the organizers who were fired in the Tennessee store. So Starbucks fired those workers back in February, and here was their excuse. Starbucks said that the firing was because the 7 workers violated security policies by staying in the store after hours, allowing a TV crew behind the counter and in the back of the house, and in the case of one worker, opening the safe without permission. But we know from the evidence that we've seen that this was really a case of retaliation against these workers who were organizing the union. Here's what one worker said after she was fired. "I was fired by Starbucks today for policies that I've never heard of before and that I've never been written up for before." So the National Labor Relations Board filed a legal motion challenging this firing. And Cheryl Lippman, the district judge in Memphis, said the National Labor Relations Board had provided enough evidence that the dismissals earlier in the year were motivated by anti-union animus. Lippman also ordered Starbucks to no longer engage in the type of activities that gave rise to the case. Those activities include discharging, disciplining, or discriminating against employees because of their union support and activities. One of the main union organizers gave a comment on this, and she said, "We're beyond thankful the federal court ruled in our favor, and this just goes to show that Starbucks will do everything in their power to silence us. Memphis is a union town. We remain the only store to have organized in Memphis for fear of workers being fired like we were." So for them, it's in a large part about job security. But we have reporting from the Washington Post of one of the main organizers with Starbucks Workers United saying, Howard Schultz thought he could terrify an entire nation of baristas by firing the Memphis Organizing Committee. Thankfully, a federal judge has found that Schultz is not above the law. And right now, Starbucks, as the kids would say, is big mad about the ruling. Reggie Borges, a Starbucks spokesperson, said the company would appeal the ruling and request a stay of the order, which could result a pause of the reinstatement of these employees until the review is finished. So they're going to keep fighting this. They've lost big, and they're going to keep fighting this. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so big day for labor. I love this. So a nuance is necessary, but it's also very good. We're going to get to that in a second. But first, we have to note that anything called the Memphis 7 is by definition cool. So that's where Starbucks lost immediately, okay? But that actually does relate to the substance as well. But also, let's note that Jessica just said, as the kids say. Okay, as if she's 85. Okay, anyways, now to the substance. Look, there are legitimate cases of people getting fired that don't have anything to do with the union in the middle of a union drive. It happens all the time. That's why you have a National Labor Relations Board. Now, when it goes to them, it's not easy for the union to win. It's not easy for the workers to win. And if you show legitimate reason, and oftentimes there are legitimate reasons, then you win, the employer wins, right? So the fact that Starbucks lost is a huge deal. Second of all, a hint as to why it might have been union organizing that got them fired in the first place is that there were 7 of them. All 7 miraculously violated random codes at Starbucks at the same time. The same 7 who were organizing and Starbucks knew they were organizing. Well, that is a hell of a coincidence, and that is why you lose. And now having to rehire them, and the message this sends, more importantly, to the rest of the workers: don't be afraid. You can organize. You're allowed to do that here in America. You're allowed to do that at Starbucks. That's a giant message and a very positive one today.
To me, it's really funny watching this pendulum swing. Now you talk about, as the kids can say, as you can see from the gray here, I'm not one of the kids. I've been around, and I was in manufacturing in the 80s when unions were under attack, when unions were destroyed and they were made evil and greedy through the 80s, through the 90s and early 2000s, and the pendulum is swinging back. Like these companies like Starbucks, like Howard Schultz is saying, hey, you don't need a union, we'll pay you well, we pay for you to go to school, all this and all that. But now workers are finding out, all the benefits that you used to get, healthcare and pay and everything, that was all negotiated by unions. Unions are not a bad thing. And I have to be honest, it is comical for Memphis to call itself a union town, okay? There's nothing in the South that's a union town. The South is not a union place. But if this is happening, that's a great thing. I think the pendulum should be swinging. Young people are finding out why unions were first organized back 100 years ago, literally in the early 1900s, when you had labor barons and stuff. And now we look at these multi-billionaire CEOs and it's like, whoa, we're back to the robber baron era where the CEO owns, billions of dollars, and the worker bee is lucky to get $15 an hour and have 3 roommates. So good for them. I hope the pendulum swings farther and that unions come back. And all this talk about labor shortages and everything else, no, it's pay shortage, it's benefit shortage, it's people not willing to give up their time and work for nothing. So good for them for organizing. And wow, I hope the courts do continue to back them up.
Absolutely. I want to see the Memphis 7 returning back to work, just all together. They need a walkout song coming into the shop at Starbucks. But I'm glad what you brought up, Alonzo, about the new momentum in the labor movement. We have that video. Let's watch this.
I'm gonna tell y'all like this. I heard a rumor. Y'all want to be the new Amazon of Pittsburgh. Well, guess what? We set up shop there. And just like today, we gonna set up shop here every damn time. We ain't going nowhere. UPMC, they owe y'all some money. Amazon owe us a bag too. So, the time that we're in right now in this country, it's important that we continue this fight. It's important that we come together as people and we bring it right to the doorsteps. You gotta keep fighting. Because when we fight back, we win. When we fight back, we win. When we fight back, we win. Every damn time.
So UPMC is an acronym for the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and it's the biggest employer and landowner in the region. It claims to be a nonprofit, but they're raking in billions and not paying any money in taxes. And people in the communities in Pittsburgh are quite upset because they need that revenue for infrastructure, for schools, for healthcare and investment in those communities. But as Alonzo just pointed out, there's a huge problem with high CEO pay and low pay for workers. Jeffrey A. Romoff, the president and CEO, makes $8.5 million annually. 34 of their top paid employees are earning over $1 million, while they're not paying their workers fair wages and they're not paying taxes. And so the labor movement has a lot of momentum, and organizing and leadership like that is exactly why.
So that was Chris Smalls in Pittsburgh today, where they're having Netroots, and they all went together to do an action in front of UPMC. But the main point of that story is that the fire is spreading. So now there's more and more union efforts. And look, I gotta say that in the beginning I was a little skeptical because some of the unions were targeting the most progressive places because they thought it was low-hanging fruit, and it felt a little unfair. But I'm like, wait, you're leaving the giant multi-trillion-dollar companies and targeting some folks that are barely surviving, right? But I have to say, no, to be fair, they spread and spread and spread and got to larger and larger companies. So they were building momentum. So looking back on it, you say, maybe that was a good strategy to start small and get bigger and bigger. Now, we're talking about Amazon, we're talking about Starbucks, and now organizing is spread all over the country, and that's a great phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, I get why they started small, because if you started big, if you challenged Amazon and a big healthcare company, they own Congress people, right? They straight up own people in Congress. So that they own people who appoint judges. They own politicians who appoint judges. It makes it a much harder fight. So good for them for building momentum with the smaller companies and the smaller wins, because these big corporations, as you say, multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations, are going to be a very difficult fight. And one of the things that they might try to do is, I don't know, outsource more labor, but they definitely have the money to get politicians on their side. I mean, unfortunately, America's politicians are for sale, right? We've all heard the joke that they should wear NASCAR suits so we know who owns them and who they're sponsored by, but that's the truth. So now that they're taking on the big boys, the fight becomes much more expensive and much tougher. So getting the people on your side with the small wins and getting the community on your side when, like you say, you have a big corporation here, not paying taxes, using all the infrastructure, but not paying taxes to the community, that's how you get the people on your side. Good for them, good strategy.
Absolutely, and we have yet another big labor win to report on. Nurses in a Maine medical center have defeated a right-wing push to decertify their union that they have already won. So reporting from Common Dreams, a tally released late Thursday showed that Maine med nurses voted 1,108 to 387 in support of retaining the Maine State Nurses Union Association, National Nurses United, as their collective bargaining representative, a nearly 75% vote in favor of the union. The vote, held in person on August 17th and 18th, favored the union even more heavily than the initial 1,001 to 750 vote in 2021. The decertification push was openly backed by the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, which is an anti-union organization that said it provided free legal assistance to Brooks and other petition supporters. We have a quote from Jonica Frank, who's a registered nurse and a member of the union's bargaining team, who said, "We have already negotiated historic improvements in pay, in working conditions, and on patient safety issues. A no vote in this election would have meant that all of these things could be taken away from us. Once again, in this election, we have spoken and we are not going back." So not only are we in a time where there's massive momentum in the labor movement, there's a lot of union busting going on as well. And there's a lot of busting of unions that already exist, not people trying to form a union, but trying to decertify people who have already voted to unionize.
Yeah, so look, it's a great day for labor, it really is. And I want to give credit to a couple of different people here. And Anthony McClendon, who's one of our members on YouTube, made a great point, which allows me to transition to what I wanted to say. He said, Cenk, when you talk about the savvy, guts, and determination of the younger generation, these union stories prove that, and the generation after them. I totally agree, and that's exactly what I wanted to say, Anthony. Because a lot of this, especially at Starbucks, was not started by some giant union that already existed. It was started by young people who had had enough. And they said, no, we're gonna organize. If a union wants to come, great, wonderful. They went searching for a union, and that happened at Amazon at some places too. It's the younger generation saying, I'm just not gonna take your crap anymore. Like the mythology that corporate media puts in, that you cannot, that management is always right, you can't, status quo must always be maintained, corporate rule is awesome. And now people are saying, no, the younger generation is saying, it's not awesome, it's not helping us at all, and corporate media yelling at us is completely unpersuasive. So I love that the younger generation is now using their power. That's the only way we're ever gonna get the change. And then Shy Cold Train 42 is a member on our site. And by the way, guys, you could, for YouTube, just hit the join button below. For our site, tyt.com/join, and you can tell we do the show with you guys, and you guys are so smart, great points. And Shy Cold Train 42 wrote in, employers are now thinking about unionizing Walmart, a corporation that pays their employees so poorly that Walmart is being subsidized by the government. It's time to bring the fight to Walmart. That is exactly right, there we go. And if, by the way, anybody tells you don't do it, if you really need a union at your place, and at these giant companies you almost all do, right? Don't let your manager talk you out of it, don't let the media talk you out of it. Don't let anyone, the people who say they have experience and try to intimidate you, etc., talk you out of it. Go forward. These giant companies badly need labor to coalesce. Otherwise, they're gonna misuse and abuse their workers to no end.
Cenk, thank you for saying that. You know what you said about them trying to talk you out of it. It reminds me of voting, right? If it wasn't so important, they wouldn't try so hard to stop you. If the union wasn't so important to help you, they wouldn't be fighting so hard for you to not have a union. You obviously need, and especially a company like Walmart, as your subscriber said, Walmart is subsidized by the federal government. There are Walmart employees who collect food stamps, and there are multi-billionaires who run the company. And it's absolutely insane that that's going on. You know, to the nurses in Maine, and there are certain professions that it's mind-boggling that they're under attack. Who attacks nurses, right? I mean, if there's anything we should have learned in the past 2 years is how valuable, how brave, how frontline are they? Like, oh, by the way, thanks for risking your life through the pandemic. We'd like to not pay you. You know, it's mind-blowing. It's the same thing with teachers and trying to do away with teaching unions and stuff like that. I don't know, man. Kudos to the young people, what you just said, to listen, get angrier, fight harder, okay? Don't work. If do what it takes to unionize and get your respect and get your money and get your health care and get your benefits, because these corporations don't care about you. The guy at the top who's making, what was that salary you gave, 8 million a year? And that's low in the CEO world. He's scraping the bottom in the CEO world at 8 million. There's CEOs that are tipping 8 million to their staff or whatever. The labor force deserves to get paid. Young people deserve that opportunity to one day own a home. I mean, I joke about it. I have a joke. This one will get me killed. It's like, oh yeah, you're one of those letter generations that will never own a home, right? It's harsh, but it's true. Change it, make it untrue. Fight for yours.
100%. I'll say one last thing. Our side shouldn't be afraid of a vote either. So they did a decertification vote. So what? By the way, 500 nurses did ask for one, right? And it made it seem like they were the majority. They had the vote. Turns out, nope, they were the minority. The union won the vote easily with 75% of the vote. That means the workers want it. Fantastic, now we know. And by the way, since the number went way up, since the original time that they certified the union, that shows you they were actually very happy with the union. That's why they got a bigger percentage of the vote the second time around. Nothing wrong with votes, and it's great that the nurses union won that one easily.
I love that we're talking about young people, and I love that Alonzo is saying we need to get angrier. Corporations are big mad. We also need to be big mad. There's nothing we can be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of, because these corporations are nothing without their workers. All of the power is in the hands of the workers, and while they may threaten you and say if you form a union, you may lose your job, you may get worse benefits, it's much better to relate to us directly. It's all not true. They're telling you all of that stuff because they are scared. And it's true that young people are fed up with the country that they're inheriting. I mean, I got a graduate degree in public policy, and the first thing I did after that was go right back to organizing, because all I learned is the people who are supposed to have answers in this country absolutely do not. And I think one benefit of this younger generation is we have tools at our disposal like TikTok, like social media, where information can spread incredibly fast. And this week, I'm a part of 70 influencers who are saying, we're not going to take any money with Amazon. We are not going to work with Amazon, and this will hopefully inspire other TikTokers to make that same pledge and say to Amazon directly, we are not going to work with you. We are not going to push your online revenue up unless you meet the demands of the workers and recognize the union. And so because young people are able to communicate at a much faster rate than they were in previous generations, I think that's a big reason this is being successful. The last thing that I'll say about this is that the Amazon labor union is special in its own way because it is worker-led. This was not an outside shop like a big international union like the SEIU or AFL-CIO. They do great work, but it's really important that this organizing came from workers who were upset with their working conditions and organized a walkout. And that momentum led to a union. So it's really huge that, yes, this is coming from young people, people who are fed up, and it's worker-led.
Absolutely, so love it. That's a lot of good news to start the show with. You're welcome. Okay, when we come back, we will make fun of Republicans, of course, but it is on serious issues. They've got more witch hunts. We'll fight back when we return. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Alonzo, Jessica, and Laura Glidden. Laura, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. She hit the join button below the video on YouTube. That's how you make dreams come true. Dreams of progressive change. That's what we're working on. You think we're not going to get it? We are going to get it. And we're going to get it with our members, tyt.com/join for everybody else. Also, Bet Rodriguez, thank you so much for the donation on Super Chat. We appreciate it. Jessica.
All right, before the break, Cenk promised you would be making fun of Republicans. Promises made, promises kept. Watch this.
Because I'm one of the Americans that are sick and tired of our government allowing the abuse of the American people. But when it comes to gender-affirming care, which is really child abuse, this is actually an assault and it's child abuse.
Okay. All right, Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're going to show more of that video in just a second here. But what she's saying is that a child telling their parents, I believe this gender is right for me, and them believing them is child abuse. Weird argument to make. Is it a crime? Marjorie Taylor Greene believes so, and she has plans to make it so. Let's watch this.
I'm introducing a bill called Protect Children's Innocence Act, and it would create a law that would cause it to be a Class C felony for any person involved in so-called gender-affirming care. That means genital mutilation surgery, that means hormones, that means puberty blockers, anything involving any youth.
She meant what she said on Tucker Carlson because today she did introduce a bill that would make giving gender-affirming care a Class C felony. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so they conflate issues all the time. And it's in an effort to attack trans people and LGBTQ people in general. So as we're going to show you in a related story in a minute, in Utah they passed a bill, and there's only one trans girl in the whole state, and it was about trans girls in high school sports. Is that a pressing issue in Utah? Of course not. It's a totally irrelevant issue in Utah. So why are the Republicans trying to do national legislation that is affecting almost literally no one? because they want to send out a message. The message is, we hate these people. They're the others. You should be afraid of them. And don't worry, we're going to protect you from them. And then they couch it under the guise of, oh, I'm just trying to help them. Oh, I'm trying to look out for the trans kids because they're not trans. How do you know? You don't even know them. I know them better than their parents. Wait a minute. The Republicans ran a campaign in Virginia saying, oh, the Democrats want to teach science and history. It's a war on parents. Well, you're saying the parents shouldn't get to decide what their kids are gonna do. You're gonna have a war on parents and say, no, I'm taking control of your kid's life and I'm not gonna let you make those decisions. And of course, what I started with, which is conflating things. They make it seem like everyone is getting reassignment surgery, okay? No, most of the stuff is way more benign and not permanent at all. But they put them all in the same bucket. And they make it seem like anything that says, hey, it's okay to be you, is gender reassignment surgery, they're chopping this, etc. They're mutilating the kids. They said mutilating in that segment, 3, 4, 5 times? It's just absolutely gross. It's not an effort to protect those kids, it's an effort to target those kids.
Okay, let me start with, as we said, the name of my special, Cenk, stupid don't get tired. That could be Marjorie Taylor Greene's motto. That could be every day when she goes to work, I'm still here, stupid don't get tired. I honestly didn't know she was allowed to introduce legislation. I thought they had just taken that away from her because she's so ridiculous. And to me, the funniest thing in that clip is looking at Tucker Carlson maintain his serious face, because you know that's the only thought he's having. Maintain that face, maintain that face. It's like you said, the hypocrisy is beyond belief. We're gonna stop parents from doing what they want to do with their children? Really? Because in Florida, you want the parents to burn books. You want conservative parents to have the ability to stop any child from learning. So those parents, that's okay. But if a parent wants to love their child as their child is and support their child as their child comes to them with this, and again, like you said, Cenk, they consider these people other, but there's also, they can't imagine, but we can, how difficult that is for a child to talk to their parents about. The difficulty in feelings with, I mean, it's hard enough being a teenager, a child, going through puberty, everything else that you're dealing with. Right now you're dealing with this, your personal gender decisions and coming out and looking for support for your parent. And you think Congress needs to be involved? And not just Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who every day is fighting to be the dumbest person in Congress. And that's a tough fight because Lorraine Boebert's there and Herschel Walker's on his way to the Senate. So she's got a lot of work to do. It is, I will always make jokes about it because it should be comical, and unfortunately, it is real.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get some more details out about this. Cenk mentioned the Utah story, and I think this is something that's closer to child abuse. It's definitely treating children badly. The rights assault on transgender kids and the transgender community in general has some big consequences. So parents at one school in Utah filed a complaint and asked the school to investigate whether a girl who had beaten their daughters by a wide margin in competition was transgender. A representative from the state's High School Athletics Association told legislators on Wednesday. People were saying things like, this female athlete doesn't look feminine enough. Just because she is good at sports and she is beating their kids, they started questioning her sex. And let's remember that 42 states have passed either anti-trans or anti-abortion laws, and more than half of the states have considered anti-trans legislation. And Utah, as Cenk mentioned earlier, did try and pass that bill, and it was vetoed by the governor. Spencer Cox, who is a Republican governor there, said rarely has so much fear and anger been directed at so few. And he makes a really good point with this, because among US adults, 0.5% identify as transgender. Among youth ages 13 to 17 in the United States, 1.4% identify as transgender. So they're really making a much larger deal about this than it needs to be. And it's really weird. And they're distracting us with these conversations and the culture war when we could be having substantive conversations about how to make things better in this country. But they would rather talk about this, and it really is about freedom. This is something that I think should be a conversation within a home and within a family.
So what they did was they turned her great day into a nightmare. So she wins by a wide margin, she's thrilled. But what she doesn't know is there's a witch hunt out to get her. So the other parents start whispering because they know the right wing has passed this law. And they're like, oh, okay. They're judging her looks. She's going to high school. And they're like, oh, she did a great job of winning. I think she looks like a boy. Yeah, don't you think? She looks like a man. I bet she's a man. Let's go target her. And then they make the administration literally investigate her. So they go back and they go to junior high school records, elementary school records, and try to make sure. Thank God they did do a genitalia check. But that's next. These guys they love big government, and they're almost all perverts. So they're always looking into our sex lives. What are they doing? What are they up to? What's their gender identity? What kind of sex are they having? Oh, I want to know. Is it the kids? Let's check the kids. And another state, we covered it, passed a law saying, yeah, we can check their genitals. They're disgusting. So they try to ruin that poor girl's life. Well, she did something amazing. She won by a lot. And the bitter right-wing parents are like, I can't believe she beat our daughter. Let's accuse her of being a different gender. And let's try to ruin her life. Welcome to the right wing. It's not family values at all. They hate everyone that isn't exactly like them. And it's just a release for them. It's emotional release. Like, because their lives aren't going well. So what are they picking on? They're picking on little kids. They're disgusting.
I hope the girl who won gets 2 phone calls. One from Venus Williams and one from Serena Williams saying, congratulations, we've been there too. Because they did this to the Williams sisters when they came in and started whooping everybody's ass in tennis. They were like, they can't be girls. They're too strong, they're this or that. The girl who won by a wide margin, whatever that means, whatever sport this is, was more talented and trained harder and beat your kids. And I hope that girl has the support somewhere saying, you are great, you destroyed them. And you know what, next time, beat them by even more. Let them know, how dare they challenge your gender because you're better than them. These little girls, you wanna know how Karens are raised? This is how Karens are raised. This is how you create Karens. Oh, you lost? Well, it must be someone else's fault. It couldn't be that somebody worked harder than you. It couldn't be that someone's better than you. No, we have to report them to the government and we have to get them investigated. There has to be something wrong here. You know what? You lost, okay? That little girl blew you away in your own sport. I cannot support her enough. I love this. And I truly hope that the Williams sisters, that other great athletes send their support to this girl and say, you keep doing what you're doing. And what's funny, Cenk, when you talk about the right wing, what is their always story? Work hard, survive on merit, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Guess what? The girl that destroyed your daughter worked harder than your daughter and is better than your daughter. So please shut up.
Yeah, and the reason we don't have as many details about this young girl and what she was competing in is because the Athletic Association there in Utah is doing the best to protect her identity. Let's hope for her sake it stays that way. But obviously what Marjorie Taylor Greene was arguing for has intense consequences, and she wants every Republican to be in lockstep with her with this legislation and fighting against the transgender community. Let's watch this.
We're not even a party worth deserving of the American people's votes if we cannot protect children from this horrific child abuse and create this to be a felony, because this practice has to end. It's the kind of things nightmares are made of, and these are monsters under kids' beds.
Monsters under kids' beds. The doctors and the therapists and the family members that are giving gender-affirming care to kids, she is now calling monsters under their beds, which I think goes to show if you let Marjorie Greene talk for a little bit too long, it easily gets derailed.
Yeah, last thing on that, she says, no, the parents don't know, the doctor doesn't know, most importantly, the kid doesn't know, none of them knows, but Marjorie Taylor Greene knows. And instead of giving them affirming care, she says, their parents basically should reject them and say, no, we don't believe you. We think our little girl or our little boy is a liar, and I'm not gonna give you a damn thing, and you should hate yourself. And she says that there are monsters under their beds. Well, that part is true. It's just that you were just looking at it. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson are those monsters. All right, we gotta take a break here. When we come back, Tucker Carlson's not done being a monster. He's now going to attack minorities. Of course! We'll do that when we return. All right, back on TYT, and On Mouse just became a member on YouTube and gifted a membership. How you like that generosity? We like it a lot. Thank you, we appreciate it. Cenk, Jessica, and Alonzo with you guys. And I missed this comment, so I gotta throw it in real quick. Mary Duff 911 on Twitch writes in, Cenk needs to go on vacation all the time. His skin color is very sexy. Look, I'm not saying it. I'm just hearing the chitter chatter and reporting the news. That's all, that's my job. Okay, Jessica.
All right, again, promises made, promises kept. Here's Tucker Carlson.
EPA alone gets more than $40 billion in this bill, including more than $30 billion for so-called disadvantaged communities. What are those? Well, they're not really defined. People who vote for Joe Biden. So what it really means is the EPA is going to spread more identity politics and race hate. Are you sick of that yet?
Okay, so Tucker Carlson is saying that the carve-outs in the Inflation Reduction Act for climate action are going to inspire race hate. Before we show more of that video, let's get into what the bill actually will do for disadvantaged communities. So the White House estimates that the law includes over $60 billion in spending on so-called environmental justice. That includes money to reduce emissions around the United States ports, plant trees in city neighborhoods that are hotter because of past racist housing policies, make electric vehicles more affordable, and install solar panels and make buildings more efficient in low-income neighborhoods. But let's also keep in mind there are some ways this bill could actually hurt Black communities, but that's not something that Tucker Carlson bothered to mention. The Emergency Relief for Farmers of Color Act, which passed alongside the American Rescue Plan, called for $4 billion in loan forgiveness to farmers of color, in addition to providing aid to Black growers. The emergency funding marked the first step in correcting decades of discrimination that farmers faced at the hands of the USDA. Yet the loan forgiveness program has been removed from the inflation measure before any dollars could reach farmers. Still, Tucker Carlson focused on the parts of the bill that will impact poor families. Let's watch that.
The total annual budget of the EPA currently stands at about $10 billion. So this is a lot of money flowing to equity and the disadvantaged. And of course, everything hangs on definition. So who gets to define what disadvantaged is, a disadvantaged community? Well, that would be the EPA's administrator, a guy called Michael Regan. This is a guy who's in his late 40s who has never had an actual job in his life. He's never worked for real business of any kind. But he does have priorities, and to give you some sense of what they are, we'll tell you what he told The Daily Show this year, and we're quoting. Everything I do at EPA is through the lens of environmental justice. Contracting, procurement, air quality, water quality, land management starts with, are we protecting the least among us, those who have lacked political representation and those who have not been at the table for decades, end quote. So really, this is about spreading race hate, as virtually everything they do is. They call it equity. It's not about protecting the environment.
Tucker Carlson's racism becomes very evident because every time he covers this on his show, he ignores how systemic racism has economically impacted Black communities. So let's review some of the ways wealth accumulation has been impeded by systems of oppression in the United States. So there were 246 years of chattel slavery, congressional mismanagement of the Freedom's Savings Bank, which left 61,144 depositors with losses of nearly $3 million in 1874, the violent massacre decimating Tulsa's Greenwood District in 1921, a population of 10,000 that thrived as the epicenter of the African American business and culture community commonly referred to as Black Wall Street, discriminatory policies through the 20th century, including Jim Crow era's black codes, strictly limiting opportunity in many southern states, the GI Bill, the New Deal's Fair Labor Standards Acts, exemption of domestic agricultural and service occupations, and redlining, just to name a few. So wealth was taken from these communities and opportunities were taken from these communities before they ever had a chance to grow. And we're still seeing the lasting impact of that today. There's a huge gap when it comes to income of white versus black Americans. In 2019, the median white household held $188,000 in wealth, 7.8 times that of the typical black household. It is worth noting that levels of average wealth, which are more heavily skewed by households with the greatest amount of wealth, are higher. Rich white households reported average wealth of $983,400, which is 6.9 times that of rich black households. So pretty shocking that Tucker Carlson has the nerve to say what he says and ignore history and not present the facts for their viewers. And it's definitely the case that most people never confront these facts.
Yeah, so there's a couple different components of this story. I'm just gonna do a quick aside when he said that the EPA administrator had never worked a real job in his life. He's worked in government. Well, so do teachers. They work as teachers, a lot of them their whole lives. And Tucker Carlson would say they never had a real job. By the way, here's more government workers, cops. So they've never had a real job. Firemen have never had a real job, okay? But he puts a picture of a black guy up and says he's never had a job. Right? And then he says he's the one doing hate against poor white people. First of all, there's nobody doing hate against white people at all. There's nothing in the bill that punishes white people. That implication is completely fabricated. Okay, now let's get to, well, should there be this money appropriated for these disadvantaged communities? And he thinks that that's outrageous and a racist thing to do. But what he's leaving out is what Jessica just explained. He's leaving out two things. One is what she explained, which is through the history of racism that we've had in this country, not just slavery, not just Jim Crow, not just, hey, 40 acres and a mule, just kidding, we're giving you nothing. But over and over again, systemic discrimination that has robbed African Americans of the ability to collect wealth. And sometimes they would collect wealth, and like in the Tulsa example, oh, you've got a Black Wall Street, people are wealthy now, we'll kill you. And that's how they solved that one. Oh, you can accumulate wealth in your households. In fact, that is the number one way that all Americans accumulate wealth, in their homes, the property values. Oh, we'll redline you, we'll make sure you can't get homes, you can't get mortgages, so you can't accumulate assets. And then when they started an 8-to-1 disadvantage, the Tucker Carlsons of the world go on TV and go, well, what's the big deal? Now they want to even things a little bit, not by discriminating against white people, but by helping African Americans just a tiny bit. After all of those years of discrimination, how dare you? No, you're hating white people if you don't let us keep cheating. And to the Fox News audience, that makes a lot of sense, because they're bathed in entitlement and they think they have a right to have a leg up on you, or maybe 8 legs up on you, as you see the 8-to-1 disparity there. But there's a second issue too, which is actually a lot of minority communities have been targeted for places that create more pollution and industries that create more pollution. So let me tell you about that real quick. According to a 2021 study published in the Journal of Science, Black Americans are exposed to more pollution from every type of source, including industry, agriculture, all manner of vehicles, construction, residential sources, and even emissions from restaurants. People of color more broadly, including Black and Hispanic people and Asian Americans, are exposed to more pollution from nearly every source. And what Tucker Carlson is telling you implicitly in that segment is, good, don't try to fix that. We don't want you fixing it. We want all the pollution going to Black folks. We don't want any kind of compensation, and we want us to keep oppressing them. That's what he just actually told you. Alonzo.
Thank you, Cenk, and thank you for the second point you made. I was wondering if you were going to get to that, about how the dump is built in the Black neighborhood. The electrical, that buzzing tower happens to be next to the Black school, and all these kids get cancer and all that. And here's another thing that happens with this so-called disadvantaged communities. A lot of these poor white communities in the South, they get a factory built where they're making, fan blades for wind turbines or something like that. They get a bunch of jobs. Listen, Tucker, if Black people have it so good, why don't you switch places with us? Why don't you switch with us? Switch with me. since I have it so good, since everything's stacked in my favor, let's switch and I can be an idiot on TV spreading fear. It's so interesting this came up because I just had this conversation with a white woman who's an immigrant from another country. She's very right-wing, she's very much a Trumper, and she's one of those that believe, well, I don't have any advantages. And I try to explain to her systematic racism and how families accumulate wealth and inherited wealth. Well, I didn't inherit money, I don't have any of that. They can always play the role of the victim all too well. Unfortunately, Cenk, the truths fall on deaf ears. That's really the problem. The people watching Fox News, they never hear this information, and if they do hear it, they don't believe it. To them, the Tulsa massacre, Black Wall Street, like they just deny that it happened. It's not real to them. It's like Holocaust deniers, where they just deny. 400 years of slavery and the Head Start. We got the fact that my great-grandfather bought a house and started a store and I inherited that, and your great-grandfather legally wasn't allowed to read. Yeah, that means nothing. That doesn't matter. We're on the same level today, aren't we? It is angering, it is ridiculous. His yell of race hate, it's background noise. To tell you the truth, I feel sorry for you guys working at TYT because you actually have to listen to Tucker Carlson. You have to listen to it on a regular basis. It's the same thing over and over. We are the proud, strong white people who are scared of everything and everyone. I've never seen people so scared of anything even approaching fairness. Tucker Carlson is talking about somebody who doesn't work for a living when his lawyer says that you should not believe. His job is to report, and his lawyer said a person of common sense wouldn't believe him. How's that for not working, Tucker? Who else could be that bad at their job that their lawyer says, well, you don't believe him, do you? I don't know. I'm beyond anger. It's just so ridiculous. I hope this bill works out. I hope that Black families and people of color do get some of the jobs and some of the money. What they did to the Black farmers was a straight ripoff. White farmers get subsidies you would not believe. This is a criminal thing to do to the Black farmers. It is somewhat ironic to take money from Black farmers when their ancestors were the slaves that tilled the soil of this country. That's why it's beyond anger, Cenk. It is. I don't have a word. I honestly don't have a word for the ridiculousness of it. And people like Tucker Carlson, I honestly can't listen to. I can hold a conversation, I can hold a debate with someone intelligent who's based in facts. I can't talk to Tucker Carlson, and if you're following him, we got nothing to say.
All right, one last super quick thing. Tucker Carlson inherited the Swanson fortune, and then he says, well, we started on an equal footing. What do you mean? Okay, all right, to Alonzo's point, then why don't you give your Swanson fortune to Alonzo, and then we'll have a conversation. Because you say Alonzo's in better shape, right? And you envy him. Okay, you can switch positions by switching wealth. See how that turns out for you. Oh, you don't want to do that. Yeah.
Can I make a quick point again, referring to the brilliance of a comedian? Chris Rock said this a long time ago. He said, there's a white guy in the kitchen who won't trade places with me, and I'm rich.
That's a mic drop. That's that. We're gonna try and get through this next story. Let's watch this.
Really, if you look at the Espionage Act, it's not about taking them and putting them in a place that's roughly as safe as they were in the first place.
Okay, so the world of Trump still flailing around, trying to figure out precisely why Donald Trump had classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. And we have more from Rudy Giuliani here. A lot of mental gymnastics going on. Let's watch.
And now they want to make him responsible for having taken classified documents and preserved them. Really, if you look at the Espionage Act, it's not really about taking the documents. It's about destroying them or hiding them or giving them to the enemy.
Right.
It's not about taking them and putting them in a place that's roughly as safe as they were in the first place.
Okay, let's take Rudy Giuliani's advice and take a look at the Espionage Act. Turns out what he just said, completely false. So in fact, 18 US Code 793 makes it a crime for anyone entrusted with or having lawful possession or control of any document relating to the national defense to permit the same to be removed from its proper place of custody with gross negligence. The warrant also alleges that Trump breached 18 US Code 1519, destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations and bankruptcy, and 18 US Code 2071, concealment, removal, or mutilation generally. So Rudy got that wrong, but Judy's not alone. We also had Christina Bobb go on Fox News and accidentally admit to some things. Let's watch this.
Was there a limited number of people who had access to that storage room? It seems like a pretty important room, right? Since they've made such a big deal of it and have the lock on it and so forth.
Certainly, Mar-a-Lago is secure in and of itself. Just getting onto the compound is hard. And then it was a locked door, and getting back down into the basement, there's security. You can't just walk down there. Only certain members of staff can get there, and then there's only one key. So yes, it's a very limited number of people that have access down there. And it was enough to where President Trump believed, or our team believed, that it was secure enough. They asked for one more lock, add another lock, which we did. And then for whatever reason, they decided that they still needed to raid the place.
And only one or two people had access to that room, to your knowledge?
That's my understanding. I mean, I would have to check with the maintenance of that area, but my understanding is a very small number of people that could get in there.
All right, I want us to skip over to graphic 5. This is from the Huffington Post reporting, HuffPost. Trump's document facility was a storage room off an interior hallway near the pool with boxes everywhere. That pool was a major part of the social scene at the resort and a focal point of activity as part of Mar-a-Lago's day-to-day business. In other words, these documents were regularly near a ton of people, and we have more reporting on what Mar-a-Lago was like. Back in 2017, he was taking meetings with Abe Shizo at the dinner table and turned it into an impromptu situation room. Mar-a-Lago member Richard D'Agazio, my Italian family is really upset at me for not pronouncing that properly. He continued taking pictures and he posted them on Facebook that night. The president receiving news about the missile incident from North Korea on Japan with the prime minister sitting next to him. So he's taking public phone calls in Mar-a-Lago where people can overhear them. He was not careful about where these documents were or where national security matters were discussed.
Okay, so Mar-a-Lago is a disaster and it's Swiss cheese. So, I mean, I can't figure out which one was worse. I think it's the latter in terms of Rudy Giuliani and Christina Bobb, who is now Trump's new lawyer. She's like, oh, Rudy, you think you could screw up your client's case on national television? Hold my beer, watch me do this. So first of all, they're both admitting that the documents were there. So there goes your, the FBI planted it excuse, which by the way, as we talked about on a previous show, that's the lie they should have stuck with. That would have been hard to disprove, but instead the idiot Donald Trump taped it from the security camera, so now we know the FBI didn't plant it, and now they're all on television going, oh, they were there, but they were perfectly secure. Christina Bobb says, oh, they asked us to add another lock. No, they asked you to add a lock. It's sitting in a storage closet that anybody can walk into without a lock. And it's our top nuclear secrets. That's insane. Okay, now let me give you more context. Not only did the rando Mar-a-Lago dude walk in the middle of that conversation with the leader of Japan that Jessica just read you, but it's first of all, that place, I guarantee you, is littered with spies. All you have to do is pay $200,000 admission fee, and boom, you're in. So I would be shocked if every major country didn't have a spy at Mar-a-Lago. It would actually be absolute negligence if they didn't. He's leaving around nuclear secrets. And right now, if they didn't have spies in Mar-a-Lago, every country's going, oh, God damn it, why didn't we do that? It would have been so easy. But not only that, once a Chinese tourist just walked into Mar-a-Lago, just walked in, okay? She was wandering around, they found her They claim she's a tourist. It's also entirely possible they wasn't a tourist. Okay, they probably figured out later, just pay the admission fee, which for a country is nothing. Okay, now I'll give you one more example. Bachelor contestant James McCoy Taylor was there. Why? Because the right wing is desperate for any celebrity to be on their side. They're like, oh, he was a former Bachelorette contestant. He's really famous. So they have him going around Mar-a-Lago. And don't get this guy twisted. He loves Trump. He even wrote a song. And here's one of the goofy lines from it. I just want a president who ain't woke so I can live in a country not broke. That's that guy, okay? So now here's what he said about his time at Mar-a-Lago. Quote, I snooped around pretty dang freely and Secret Service wasn't too worried about which room I went in, what I looked at, and I certainly didn't get the sense that there were any rooms I wasn't allowed in containing nuclear info. LOL. This guy's walking around, he's like, there's no room I couldn't go into. Security never stopped me. They had it in an unlocked room. And by the way, Rudy, you're like, no, the Espionage Act. He misquotes it as Jessica explained, etc. But he's like, so it's only a problem if you're gonna give it to our enemies. Why do you think Trump had it, you idiot? And so here's his lawyers admitting all over television, we had it. Random staffers had access to it. Anyone who went to Mar-a-Lago had access to it. They're like, oh, it's essentially the same. Do you know that those top secret that information are kept in specific rooms that are highly guarded, that have massive security around it? They're not like a storage room at Mar-a-Lago that James McCoy Taylor can walk into and go, hey, I can walk into any dang room, including the one with the nuclear secrets. That's what's happening at Mar-a-Lago.
Thanks for painting that picture.
There should be a game show. It's called America's Worst Lawyer, and we have the contestants right here. And you could throw in Alex Jones's lawyer, who sends all of his cell phone records to the other side. That's a competitor, but it really is hard to beat Trump's lawyers when it comes to being bad. The funniest thing about Rudy is what he said the Espionage Act isn't. That's exactly what it is. It literally says you cannot take secrets out of the secure government facility. Like, it literally says that. And he's like, well, that's not it. Wow, how can you be so bad as a lawyer? And the woman brought up another point that's very funny when she said the maintenance of the building. You know who has the keys to every room at Mar-a-Lago? I guarantee you, the cleaning staff, the maintenance people can get, I guarantee you, the maintenance people have the key to that top secret room in the basement. And by the way, that is the best place to secure things. I think Fort Knox was actually thinking of moving the gold down to a storage room in the basement and putting a second lock on the door, because what could be more secure than that? It's comical, and what you said is absolutely true. Actually, I think the problem with the spies, the reason they don't take the information, I think the spies are like, no, it can't be this easy. This has to be false. This has to be a setup. It can't, they wouldn't just leave it in the room next to the pool where I was changing clothes. Those couldn't be the real nuclear secrets, could they? Next to the bar where we keep the extra gin and vodka. Those are the nuclear secrets? No, this is a setup. They've got a camera somewhere. Yeah, in a way it is safe, because no spy worth his salt. You've seen spies, you've seen how hard Tom Cruise works to get into a room. Tom Cruise never walks into the storage room next to the pool. No, that had to be fake information. That had to be. Where's the real information hidden, Cenk?
Okay, I tell you, man, every country has their nuclear secrets now. Because all you had to do was either
they're not secrets. They're not secrets anymore. They're party favors.
Yeah,
come on down to Mar-a-Lago, grab a nuclear secret, and head on home.
Totally, pigs in a blanket and nuclear secrets. Because I mean, not only could you go as a guest, you think Trump has really high standards and they're vetting all the staff there? You don't have any idea how easy it would be for a spy to get hired as a staff member at Mar-a-Lago and then just get the keys to every room?
Can I jump in really quick on that, Cenk? Just be brown, have a Spanish accent, you got the job. That's their only, that's the only thing they're looking for. It's, oh, you're a minority? Yes, you'd be a perfect cleaning person. Help yourself to some secrets.
Yeah, so they all have them, and Alonzo's absolutely right. Like the spy is going to be like, done. Oh, it's right here. Okay, and he just goes home.
To wrap this up, the web of lies from the right, they have now said that actually these documents were about to be declassified. There was a standing order for that. Really, you're going to declassify the nuclear codes? 18 former Trump administration officials said they have never heard of such an order issued during their time working for Trump, and that they believe the claim to be patently false. Several officials laughed at the notion. One senior administration official called it bull S-word. Two of Trump's former chiefs of staff, John Kelly and Mick Mulvaney, went on the record to knock down the claim. So, to recap the lies that have been told, Trump didn't actually take classified documents, and the FBI actually found nothing, it's all made up. That he didn't take documents, but the FBI planted them when they got there. That he didn't take the documents, but he intended to declassify them beforehand, and there was a standing order for that. And finally, that he did take the classified papers, but only to protect them at Mar-a-Lago. Those are all of our lies. They seem really legit.
All right, we are way out of time. We got to go. Everybody check out Jessica Burbank and Alonzo Bodden on Rebel Headquarters. And make sure you're checking out Alonzo's new special on YouTube, Stupid Don't Get Tired. And I think we kind of proved that through all the right-wingers we showed you this hour. I mean, Rudy's hasn't gotten tired in decades, okay?
Can I give the opening statement on Trump's next lawyer? You see, Your Honor, what had happened was on the day in question per se, Your Honor, sir, I just got the job.
By the way, a lot of the lawyers will not take that job. Most of the lawyers say they refuse to work for Donald Trump. They're like, I'm not that stupid. So these are the folks who
he
said,
doesn't pay you.
Yeah, and these are the folks that said, yeah, I am that stupid. Okay, all right, we got to go. Second hour is amazing. Stay right here.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.